At approximately 8:12 hours on the morning of February 2, 1964, a San Francisco Public Utilities Commission maintenance employee discovered an abandoned vehicle on a locked fire service road above the Crystal Springs Reservoir. The road had been closed since mid-January due to seasonal debris clearance and was posted with signage prohibiting access. The car, a 1956 Chevrolet Bel Air, was positioned at a slight angle near the tree line, driver's side door open, ignition off, and no visible occupants. Responding deputies from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department located the vehicle's registration in the glove compartment, Frederick Henry Rowe, age 42, of Millbrae, California. 30 feet from the roadway, in a shallow gully obscured by coastal scrub and eucalyptus undergrowth, the officers located a male body lying supine. The man's hands bore faint ligature marks, and similar impressions were visible around the neck. No restraint was present at the scene. The man was fully clothed, shoes intact, and his expression fixed in what pathologists would later describe as an unnaturally composed state. The surrounding soil was undisturbed, no heel drag marks, no visible tread, no evidence of a struggle. Fog from the previous night had settled over the area until sunrise, dampening the scene and eliminating any clear trackable prints. A pair of broken twigs beneath the victim's shoulder indicated he had been placed, not dropped. 2 black fibers were recovered from the inside collar of his jacket, later determined to be synthetic, consistent with common coat linings but not matched to any garments in Rowe's possession. The autopsy, performed later that day by Dr. Ellis G. Chapman, confirmed ligature strangulation as the cause of death, with post-mortem indicators suggesting the victim had died elsewhere and been relocated within a 6 to 10 hour window. A cluster of bruises on the left temple was consistent with a single blow from a blunt object. Blood alcohol concentration measured at 0.14%, suggesting moderate impairment at time of death. No other drugs or sedatives were detected. Rowe was unmarried, a civilian aeronautics technician working for Pacific Avionics in Redwood City. He had no known associations with organized crime, gambling, or narcotics. Yet 2 prior police calls to his home, both filed by his ex-wife in 1959, documented physical altercations, though charges were not pursued. Descriptions of Rowe by neighbors ranged from mild, quiet man to bitter drinker with no patience for women. Since their 1961 divorce, he had lived alone and remained socially withdrawn. What troubled investigators was the absence of robbery. Cash remained untouched in the glove compartment. The ignition keys were still in place. The vehicle interior was clean, wiped, perhaps. His belt buckle was unfastened, but his clothing was orderly. The eyes had been closed, gently. A body not discarded, but displayed. A single torn envelope was found tucked behind the passenger sun visor. It bore no stamp, no return address. Inside was a blank note card, folded once. Lab tests revealed faint impressions on the card's surface, likely the residue of prior handwriting. 3 words were discernible under forensic light: she was someone. As of February 3, 1964, the investigation remained active. No witnesses had come forward. Rowe had no known enemies, but his life, and its quiet, controlled ending, suggested otherwise. At approximately 7:04 hours on February 28, 1964, deputies with the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office responded to a call from a farm laborer who reported a dead man near the orchard ditch off Logos Avenue, south of Morgan Hill. Upon arrival, officers located the body of an adult white male, partially concealed beneath a folded canvas tarp behind an irrigation pump shed. The location was remote, shielded from view by citrus rows and unpaved maintenance access only. No vehicles were found nearby. The victim's wrists bore ligature impressions, similar in width and pattern to those found on Frederick Rowe. The neck showed deep bruising consistent with rope or cord compression. There were no open wounds, no signs of robbery, and no immediate identification. Cold temperatures overnight, dipping to 38 degrees Fahrenheit, slowed decomposition, and the estimated time of death was placed at between 8 and 12 hours prior to discovery. Within 6 hours, fingerprint records confirmed the deceased as Joseph Wayne Chalmers, age 37, of Santa Cruz. Chalmers was a self-employed electrician with a suspended license, a known habitual drinker, and previously charged in 1958 for spousal battery. The charge was dropped after the victim, his wife, Eleanor Chalmers, withdrew her complaint. Interviews with neighbors described Joseph as volatile, especially when he drank, and the kind of man who never said sorry. Detectives quickly noted the overlap with the Roe case: adult male, mid-30s to early 40s, living alone, estranged from a former spouse, no signs of theft, and the use of ligature strangulation followed by deliberate body placement. The canvas tarp was examined for fibers and prints, no foreign matches were recovered. However, tucked into the rear pocket of the victim's trousers was a folded sheet of paper, creased and slightly damp. Typed across the top in all capital letters. He didn't fall. He was lowered. No signature. No origin. The phrase was striking. Investigators from San Mateo County, now working in informal coordination with Santa Clara detectives, confirmed that the tone and method mirrored what was found in Roe's car, the mysterious card bearing the words, "She was someone." Both messages were plain, declarative, and centered on a form of justice implied but unexplained. The new note, its strange phrasing, implied control, restraint rather than rage. Further background on Chalmers uncovered a sealed juvenile record and a discharge from the Navy in 1948 following a non-court-martial infraction involving a bar fight in Yokosuka. His work as an unlicensed contractor kept him under the radar, but Eleanor Chalmers disclosed in a quiet interview that, "He put a hole in the wall beside my head once and told me that was a warning." She had no current contact with him, no knowledge of recent threats. What chilled investigators was not the death itself, but its precision. No visible struggle. No defensive wounds. Chalmers had not fought. Or he hadn't had the chance. Within 72 hours, the cases were formally linked. The California Department of Justice created a joint inquiry file, noting that while no suspect had been identified, both victims had histories of violence toward women, and both were found silenced, staged, and marked not by chaos, but by order. 2 dead men, neither mourned publicly. Both with stories of harm. And now, 2 anonymous messages, typed, delivered by hand, and left without return. At 15:46 hours on April 19, 1964, a forest surveyor for the California Division of Forestry radioed the Eureka station to report a human body in a ravine adjacent to Route 36, approximately 11 miles southeast of Bridgeville. The site was steep, accessible only on foot, and showed no signs of recent vehicle traffic. The corpse was positioned under a fallen cedar, partially obscured by pine duff and early spring growth. Sheriff's deputies and a forensic investigator from the Humboldt County Coroner's Office arrived by 1700 hours. The male victim, white, approximately mid-40s, was dressed in work trousers and a thermal-lined shirt. His wrists were tied with a length of coarse jute rope, aged and frayed, the knot aligned cleanly at the spine. His neck bore deep, dried ligature furrows. No ID was present on the body. Due to advanced decomposition, identification was delayed until April 21, when dental records confirmed the deceased as Albert Leland Crowther, 46, of Eureka, a former logger and long-haul trucker with a history of assault charges dating back to 1952. Court records listed 2 restraining orders filed by 2 separate women, one in 1959, one in 1962. Neither had resulted in formal charges beyond misdemeanor citations. In both cases, Crowther was described as explosive, territorial, and controlling. The cause of death was strangulation. Autopsy revealed multiple healed fractures on the ribs and right hand, unrelated to the murder, but suggestive of past violence. Blood toxicology was inconclusive due to decay. No signs of recent sexual activity or robbery. A fresh scrape on the victim's left palm suggested he had fallen or been pushed downhill prior to death. A track of flattened grass and displaced stones indicated the body was likely dragged into final position, once again, deliberate staging. This time, A message was left in full view. Pinned beneath a smooth river stone at the base of the neck was a half-page from a legal notepad, torn cleanly across the top, typed in uniform courier font. He chose his fists over his words. Now he is quiet. The tone matched the previous notes. The phrasing, sparse, impersonal, absolute, suggested the same author. There were no fingerprints, but analysis confirmed that the paper and ink were consistent with standard office supply brands. Forensic ink specialists noted a possible match to the earlier "She Was Someone" card from the Roe case, but the finding was non-conclusive. By late April, the California DOJ issued an interagency alert identifying the deaths of Roe, Chalmers, and Crowther as likely connected. The media had not yet drawn the link. All three cases had received minimal coverage, a footnote in the local press, a passing mention on the police blotter. But internally, a pattern was developing. The victims shared three key traits. All were men in their 30s or 40s. All had documented, credible allegations of domestic abuse or violence. None had been robbed, mutilated, or tortured. They had been silenced, efficiently, and left in symbolic repose. The ligatures varied: electrical wire, nylon cord, jute rope, but the method was consistent. The killer was adaptable, mobile, and calm. He avoided urban centers, favored isolation, and left only what he wished to be found. One profiler in the DOJ's nascent psychological services unit noted a chilling possibility: the offender wasn't escalating. He was practicing. On the morning of June 8, 1964, a maintenance crew inspecting irrigation culverts along County Road 27, northwest of Woodland, discovered a deceased male wedged beneath a concrete overpass, partially submerged in silt runoff. The body was caught under a tangle of reeds and brush, hidden from passing view. Deputies with the Yolo County Sheriff's Office arrived on scene at 8:42 hours. The victim was face down, arms bound tightly behind his back with a single nylon zip tie. A second tie looped around the neck, broken but visibly taut at time of death. No wallet, no vehicle, and no footwear were present. Drag marks leading from a nearby embankment suggested the body had been moved. Fingerprint analysis identified the deceased as Daniel Curtis Matheson, 39, of Davis. Matheson had worked intermittently as a garage assistant but was primarily unemployed. He was arrested twice in 1960 and 1963 for domestic battery. Both cases involved the same complainant, a live-in partner who later relocated out of state. No convictions were recorded. The coroner confirmed death by ligature strangulation. Trace bruising along the jawline indicated a struggle, but only partial, suggesting the victim was restrained before full resistance could begin. A small abrasion behind the right ear matched impact from a rounded object, consistent with a pipe or baton. The scene again featured a typed note, placed under the victim's chest and weighed down with a rusted bolt. His history was not rumor. It was evidence. All caps. Same font. Same deliberate tone. No signature. Detectives now faced 4 linked homicides. Each victim bore a documented pattern of violence toward women. Each was restrained, asphyxiated, then placed in isolated terrain. No valuables were taken. No suspects identified. Only notes, short, declarative, morally weighted. A statewide task group convened quietly in Sacramento. No press release was issued. Investigators feared publicity would not only hinder the case, it might encourage or escalate the killer. But internally, consensus formed. This was not chance. The killer was selecting men based on prior harm. He wasn't improvising. He was building a ledger. At approximately 6:17 hours on July 19, 1964, a Central Pacific Railway yardman discovered a body near an abandoned grain silo off South Orange Avenue, on the southeastern fringe of Fresno's industrial district. The body was seated upright against the silo's base, arms slack, legs splayed. From a distance, the victim appeared to be sleeping. A closer approach revealed dried blood along the collar and a garrote-style ligature embedded into the skin of the throat. Fresno police responded and quickly secured the area. The victim, a white male in his early 40s, bore signs of advanced livor mortis. A dark blue bandana had been knotted around the mouth, not to silence, but as a covering, lips closed neatly beneath it. No ID was located on the person. A fingerprint match identified the deceased as Ronald Eugene Deeks, 41, a recently released parolee with a documented history of violent behavior. Deeks had served 6 years in Folsom State Prison for felony assault against a female partner in 1957. He was released on parole in February 1964. According to parole files, Deeks had twice failed to appear for mandatory counseling sessions and was under administrative review. He had no fixed address but was believed to have been living out of a vehicle, a rust-colored 1949 Ford panel van registered in his name. The van was found abandoned the next day, 6 blocks from the crime scene. No fingerprints beyond Deeks were recovered from the vehicle interior. Autopsy findings aligned with prior cases, ligature strangulation, preceded by a sharp blow to the base of the skull, likely from a tool or bat. Time of death was estimated at between midnight and 3 o'clock hours. Zip ties again secured the wrists, though the plastic showed a different brand imprint, still standard industrial grade. This time, no paper note was left. Instead, investigators found a message carved into the paint of the grain silo behind the body, just above shoulder height. Counted, not missed. The phrase was etched using a blade or key, jagged but legible. Forensics found traces of skin oil on the letters, human contact confirmed, but no usable prints. The change in delivery, from typed paper to etched steel, marked a deviation, but not an escalation. The killer still displayed calm control. The timing remained precise. The victims continued to share a common history, men who had committed acts of domestic violence, all with official records. Each was killed efficiently, and each left in a position of quiet exposure. The Fresno case caused internal alarm. Unlike previous dump sites, this location sat within city limits, less than a mile from working freight yards and active commercial traffic. Investigators interpreted the shift as boldness. The killer was moving closer to populated areas, unconcerned with visibility. A statewide behavioral profile update described the offender as male, white, 30s to 40s. Mobile, likely employed in transient labor or freelance service roles. Deeply organized, shows no impulsivity. Likely possessing access to criminal records or court filings. Demonstrates fixation on patterns of abuse, with a moral lens. By late July 1964, 5 men were dead. None had been robbed. None had been sexually assaulted. All were known for hurting women. And someone was keeping count. At 21:32 hours on August 30, 1964, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department received a call from St. Agnes Hospital in Long Beach regarding a male patient who had presented with wrist lacerations and facial contusions, claiming to have escaped a kidnapping attempt. Deputies interviewed the patient, later identified as Harold Vincent Pritchard, 36, a commercial painter from Carson, California. Pritchard, who bore visible ligature abrasions consistent with prior 64-210 cases, stated he had been approached earlier that evening outside a corner bar on Del Amo Boulevard by a man offering work on a private construction site. Pritchard, according to his statement, accepted the offer after minimal questioning. He entered the man's vehicle, described as a late-model gray Plymouth station wagon, and was driven southeast, toward what he believed was a warehouse yard. Roughly 10 minutes into the drive, the suspect produced a thin cord from the center console and attempted to bind Pritchard's wrists. A physical struggle ensued. Pritchard sustained a blow to the forehead, later confirmed by hospital imaging as a minor concussion, but managed to open the passenger door while the vehicle was slowed near a stoplight. He fled into traffic and flagged down a passing driver, who took him to the hospital. The assailant fled the scene. Pritchard's account was initially treated with skepticism due to his blood alcohol content, 0.11%, and prior arrests for domestic violence in 1962 and 1963, including one active restraining order. However, forensic examination confirmed traces of nylon cord fibers embedded in the abrasions on his wrists. Additionally, a partial palm print recovered from the passenger door handle of Pritchard's jacket, transferred during the attempted restraint, was later found to match the latent smudge lifted from the Fresno crime scene, case 64-210E. This marked the first physical confirmation tying an attempted assault to the serial homicides. Pritchard's description of the assailant was vague but consistent with witness impressions from earlier vehicle sightings: white male, 30s to 40s, short hair, plain clothing, no distinguishing features. He wore gloves during the attack. No identifying details were recalled beyond the gray station wagon with a cracked dashboard and a faint odor, like paint thinner. This event altered the investigation's trajectory. It confirmed the killer was active and mobile in Southern California. He was willing to attempt an abduction in an urban setting. He had made an error, allowing a target to escape. Following this development, the California DOJ issued a confidential circular to all state law enforcement divisions under the header, Attempted Victim Survival, High Priority. Surveillance units were deployed across industrial corridors in LA, Fresno, and Bakersfield. DMV records flagged registered gray Plymouth wagons manufactured 1960 to 63. Hundreds of tips flooded in. No arrests were made. The man now had a near face-to-face encounter with authorities. He had been seen. And, for the first time, he had failed. At 6:02 hours on October 11, 1964, park rangers at Box Springs Mountain Reserve reported an abandoned vehicle off a service fire road near Ricci Canyon, positioned at an angle against a rise, wheels locked in soft gravel. The car, a gray 1961 Plymouth Savoy station wagon, matched multiple prior bolos issued statewide. Rangers secured the site and notified Riverside County deputies, who arrived within the hour. Inside the vehicle was the body of a white male, estimated age 35 to 45, seated upright in the driver's seat. A length of nylon cord was looped tightly around his own neck, knotted through the rear handle of the passenger door in a makeshift garrote mechanism. Blood had pooled across the collar and chest, the tongue protruded, lips blue. No struggle marks were evident. The scene was calm. Deliberate. No wallet was recovered, but a leather folio under the seat contained a collection of newspaper clippings related to the deaths of Rowe, Chalmers, Crowther, Matheson, and Deeks. A list of 18 names, including all 5 confirmed homicide victims and survivor Harold Pritchard. 10 Polaroid photographs of crime scenes, none previously disclosed to the public. A typed document labeled, "Correctives applied," each entry dated, with name, method, and one-line justification, e.g., repeated concussions to her skull. No arrest. Deadbolt removed. The individual was fingerprinted and identified 2 days later as Lewis Grant Withrow, age 39, of Modesto, California. Withrow had no prior convictions, no employment history post-1962, and had been declared deceased in absentia by family in 1963 after vanishing from his residence. His father, deceased in 1957, had served 17 years for aggravated battery against his wife, Withrow's mother, who died in a state facility in 1958. Archived psychiatric records from the Stanislaus County Juvenile System revealed a detailed behavioral file on Withrow. At age 14, he was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder and obsessive moral rigidity. In his final evaluation, a counselor noted, "Lewis fixates on punishment. Where others want understanding, he demands consequence." Inside the glove compartment, authorities found a final note, typed and unsigned. Each one was known. Not hunted, remembered. I gave them what the paper wouldn't print and the court wouldn't say. I end with balance. The case was officially closed on October 17, 1964. Evidence in the folio, along with matched fiber, fingerprint, and document analysis, definitively linked Withrow to all 5 homicides and the attempted abduction of Harold Pritchard. 12 names remained on the list unconfirmed. The remaining entries were turned over to cold case units for archival crosscheck. No charges were ever filed. No trial followed. The man responsible was buried in a county grave, unclaimed. In internal FBI memoranda, Case File 64-210-A was marked closed, subject deceased, corrective homicides, motive, moral retribution. The press never named him. The victims were never celebrated. But law enforcement remembered. Because every one of them had been counted. And for one man, that had been enough.